Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome on into another podcast by George Quick Take. Well, I was recently honored to be a part of a panel at Iowa State University on First Amendment and libel law. It was a great panel. It was a great show on podcast by George. I hope you caught that. There are links to it in the description below, and also on podcastbygeorge.com. If you want to see all of the footage from the panel, you can see it there. But I'm breaking it up into some quick takes to make it a little more digestible for people that maybe don't want to sit down and watch an hour-length panel. And today, right now, we're going to turn our attention to one of the speakers. It's Jared Strong. He's a senior reporter at the Iowa Capital Dispatch. He's written about Iowans and the important issues that affect them for more than 15 years, previously for the Carroll Times-Herald and the Des Moines Register. Now, his investigative work exposing police misconduct has notched several state and national awards. He's a longtime trustee of the Iowa Freedom of Information Council, fighting for open records and open government. He's a lifelong Iowan and has lived mostly in the rural western parts of the state. My kind of guy. As a matter of fact, I was struck by the fact, print journalists are probably kind of boring and, they probably are not very articulate. Oh, yeah, this guy's very articulate. He's a funny guy. Jared Strong also has real-world experience when it comes to libel law and how libel lawsuits are a threat to us all. Here's Jared.
I'm here not because I'm an expert about any of this, but because I've been sued for libel by a police officer in Western Iowa, in a small town in Western Iowa, who had some dubious relationships with teenage girls and women, and was eventually forced to resign. And when we published a story about it, we got sued basically the next day for it. So it's not often that I, in my day-to-day reporting, think about this court case and think about the protections that it affords me. I just wanted to, because I've always wanted to do this. You'll have to let me indulge, or you have to indulge me for a second. The last time somebody asked me about this court case was during the lawsuit proceedings. We went through depositions, which if you're not familiar, it's basically an interview that's under oath. And the opposing attorney, the attorney who had sued us, was quizzing me about what I studied at Iowa State, and it had been a few years. So we jump in here. He noted that I had taken a journalism law course, and I've always wanted to do a theatrical reenactment of this part of this deposition. So here goes. And he had a very bombastic way of talking, which was strange because it was just the two of us talking to each other. But and so you certainly would have studied New York Times v. Sullivan in that course, wouldn't you? And sorry, professors who are in the room or watching it, my response was, I don't recall what we studied. And he said, well, you understand the term public figure was the essence of that court case. Do you remember that study at all? And at this point, because I had just told him that, I don't remember what I studied, I did not know what I was going to say. And luckily, my attorney jumped in at that moment and said, I'm going to object because not to show my superiority on knowledge of New York Times, but I believe it's a public official case, not a public figure case. And sorry to be such a jerk on you, Mr. Van Dyke. Oh, well, that's fine. There are other Iowa cases that talk about that distinction too, so we'll argue that another point. And my attorney then said, I think we'll have many days to argue that. And at that moment in my head, I'm like trying to be very serious, but I'm like, kaboom, yeah, I still don't know what we're talking about. But my attorney just, anyway. So yeah, we in that case we never really had to drill down into that because the judge ended up dismissing it because he ruled the story was accurate. But as Jeff said before, reporters are human. Reporters make mistakes, and especially for that story, a lot of it was built on public documents, but a lot of it, especially with the relationships that the officer had cultivated, a lot of that was based on me talking to people and trying to ferret out the truth, who was telling the truth and who was lying. So, maybe that always leaves open the possibility that something in my reporting could have been false. And basically, this case provides that protection that as long as you're doing your due diligence to try to figure out the truth, you're not going to be held, financially liable for it. And in that case, a lawsuit like that can sink a small newspaper. It's incredibly, with the state of the newspaper industry at large right now, it's tough even for big newspapers, but especially small ones. If you have that threat of litigation hanging out there, it's definitely a disincentive to try to hold public officials and public figures accountable.